3 months after breaking the siege of Earth, Admiral Minho stood before the Galactic Coalition Council. Representatives from 24 surviving species watched him with a mixture of hope and fear. They had all heard the stories about Earth's victory, but seeing a human in person was different. These were the people who had done the impossible. "We are not here to ask for help," Minho began, his voice calm and clear. "We are here to offer it. The Vecthar believe they are unstoppable. We proved they are wrong. Now we intend to prove it again and again until their empire collapses." Councillor Wren leaned forward. "You want to take the offensive? Against the entire Vecthar empire?" "Yes, we have studied them for over a year. We understand their technology, their tactics, their culture. More importantly, we know their weaknesses. They are predictable, they are arrogant, and they are divided." Ambassador Yoon, Earth's diplomatic representative, stepped forward. She was younger than most ambassadors, chosen because she understood both military strategy and political negotiation. "The Vecthar Empire looks unified, but it is not. Noble houses compete for honor and status. If we strike correctly, we can turn them against each other." The council chamber filled with uncertain murmurs. Most species represented here had been broken by the Vecthar. Their military forces were destroyed or scattered. Their homeworlds were conquered or abandoned. They survived by hiding, not fighting. "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Drex, the Kelthir representative. "A coalition offensive," Commander Hanna explained, pulling up strategic displays. "We share our technology with willing species. We coordinate attacks on Vecthar supply lines and outposts. We avoid their main fleets and instead target the infrastructure that supports their expansion. We make conquest expensive, difficult, and humiliating." "And if we fail?" someone asked. "If the Vecthar counterattack?" Minho met their eyes. "Then we do what Earth did. We learn, we adapt, we survive, but I believe we will not fail. The Vecthar have conquered through fear and power. We will defeat them through cooperation and intelligence." The vote was not unanimous. Many species were too damaged, too afraid to fight again. But some voted yes. The Moran survivors who had watched their homeworld burn. The Kelthir resistance fighters who had been waging guerrilla war for decades. Representatives from 6 species who still had the courage to resist. It was not a large coalition, but it was motivated. Over the next months, Earth shared everything they had learned. Dr. Yuna's research teams worked with alien scientists, explaining how to counter Vecthar shields, how to exploit weaknesses in their ship designs, how to predict their tactical patterns. Engineer Hyun helped other species retrofit their vessels with hybrid technology. The combined fleet that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Human ships flying alongside alien vessels, each contributing their unique strengths. Miran ships were fast and maneuverable. Kelthir vessels had powerful sensors and electronic warfare capabilities. Human ships provided the weapons and tactical coordination that tied everything together. "Commander, Hanna led the first coordinated strike against a Vecthar supply depot 3 sectors from Earth. It was not a major target, but it was important. The depot supplied fuel and ammunition to 6 different Vecthar fleets. Destroying it would disrupt operations across an entire region. The attack came from 3 directions simultaneously. Human ships struck the main defenses while Moran vessels targeted the fuel storage tanks. Kelthir ships jammed communications, preventing the defenders from calling for help. The entire operation lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the depot was destroyed, and the coalition fleet vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Vecthar response was predictable. They sent hunting fleets to track down the attackers, following standard pursuit patterns. But Hanna had studied those patterns. The coalition forces were already gone, hitting a different target on the opposite side of the sector. Over 6 months, the coalition conducted 23 successful raids. Supply lines were cut, shipyards were damaged, communication relays were destroyed. None of the attacks were large enough to defeat the Vecthar militarily, but together they created chaos and uncertainty. Captain Mia commanded a stealth reconnaissance ship that ventured deep into Vecthar space. Her mission was dangerous but critical: gather intelligence about the enemy's political structure. What she discovered changed the coalition's entire strategy. The Vecthar Empire was not the unified force it appeared to be. Noble houses competed constantly for status and resources. House Krell, which had failed to conquer Earth quickly, had lost significant prestige. Other houses mocked Krell's weakness, circulating reports of his defeat among the Vecthar nobility. They are more concerned with honor and reputation than military efficiency, Mia reported to Admiral Minho. If we can make individual houses look weak or incompetent, we can turn them against each other. Humanity began a new kind of warfare, propaganda and psychological operations. They broadcast footage of their victories across Vecthar space, not threatening the Empire but humiliating individual houses. When House Krell's forces abandoned a position, Earth made sure every other house knew about it. When House Dren suffered defeats, humanity highlighted those failures. The strategy worked. Vecthar nobles began blaming each other for losses. They argued about tactics, about who deserved resources, about which houses should lead future campaigns. The Empire's unity started to crack. Meanwhile, Colonel Siak led ground forces in a different campaign, Liberation. When coalition forces identified conquered worlds with minimal Vecthar presence, Siak's troops would land, arm the local populations, and help them drive out their occupiers. The first liberation was on a world called Terrace, home to the Terrian species. The Vecthar garrison there numbered only a few thousand soldiers, tasked with keeping millions of Terrians enslaved. Colonel Siak's forces landed during a shift change when Vecthar alertness was lowest. "We are not here to conquer," Siak told the Terrian resistance leaders. "We are here to give you the tools to free yourselves." "Will you fight?" The Terrians fought. Armed with weapons and trained in tactics by human soldiers, they rose up against their oppressors. The Vecthar garrison, which had grown complacent after decades of easy control, was overwhelmed. Within a week, Terrace was free. News of the liberation spread. Other enslaved species began to hope. If the Terrians could be freed, maybe they could too. Underground resistance movements that had been dormant for years began to stir. The Vecthar Empire tried to respond, but they were stretched thin. Every time they concentrated forces to crush a rebellion, coalition forces would strike somewhere else. Every time they chased the coalition fleet, rebels would rise up behind them. They were fighting a war on dozens of fronts simultaneously. High Hunter Krell, who had retreated to Mars after his defeat at Earth, watched the Empire crumble around him. His own house blamed him for starting the cascade of failures. Other nobles demanded he commit ritual suicide to restore his family's honor. But Krell refused. He was still hunting, still trying to defeat the prey that had humiliated him. "Gather our remaining forces," he ordered. "We will return to Earth and finish what we started." But he no longer had the forces he once commanded. Many ships had been pulled away to fight rebellions or defend other territories. His fleet, which had numbered 2,000 vessels, was down to 800. And those 800 were facing an Earth that grew stronger every day. Ambassador Yoon stood before the Galactic Council again, this time with very different news. 17 worlds have been liberated. 43 successful raids on Vecthar infrastructure. Coalition forces have destroyed or captured over 300 enemy vessels. The Empire is collapsing, but they still have thousands of ships, Councillor Wren pointed out. Their core territories remain strong. For now, Yoon agreed. But empires built on fear cannot survive when that fear is broken. The Vecthar conquered because species believed they were invincible. We proved they are not. Every defeat they suffer, every world that breaks free weakens the myth of their power. Eventually, the Empire will not be destroyed by military force. It will simply fall apart because no one fears it anymore. Dr. Yuna continued to work with alien scientists, but now her focus had changed. She was not just developing weapons anymore. She was helping freed species rebuild their civilizations. Earth sent engineers, teachers, medical personnel. They helped restore infrastructure, restart industries, rebuild societies. "We are not conquerors," Yuna explained to her team. "We are liberators and protectors. When this war ends, we want allies, not subjects. We want a galaxy where species cooperate and defend each other." Across the galaxy, the balance of power shifted. The Vecthar, who had seemed unstoppable for 3 centuries, were now on the defensive. They still held many territories, still commanded powerful fleets, but they were no longer expanding. Instead, they were trying desperately to hold what they had, and everywhere they looked, they saw the symbol of Earth. Human ships protecting freed worlds. Human soldiers training resistance fighters. Human diplomats building alliances. The species that was supposed to be easy prey had become the greatest threat the Empire had ever faced. 1 year after the initial invasion, humanity emerged from hiding. The first sign came without warning. Vector sensors detected ships rising from Earth's asteroid belt, vessels that had not been there before. High Hunter Krell watched the displays with confusion, then growing alarm. "How many ships?" he demanded. 50 confirmed, High Hunter. "They are smaller than our vessels, but their energy signatures are unusual. They appear to be using modified versions of our own shield technology." Krell's confusion turned to anger. Impossible. They could not have learned our technology in such a short time. But the evidence was on the screens. The new human fleet moved with purpose, spreading into formation. These were not the desperate defenders from a year ago. These ships moved with confidence, with coordination, with deadly intent. Captain Gina commanded the first of the new vessels, a ship she had named Retribution. Around her, the crew worked at stations that combined human and Vector technology. Everything they had learned, everything they had sacrificed to understand, was built into this ship. "All systems ready," reported her tactical officer. "Adaptive shields are online. Weapons are charged and synchronized to enemy shield frequencies." Gina opened a channel to Admiral Minho, who coordinated the entire operation from his underground command center. Retribution reporting. "All ships ready for engagement." "Good hunting, Captain," Minho replied. Then he opened a channel to the entire Vector fleet, broadcasting on all frequencies. "High Hunter Krell." Minho's voice rang across space. "1 year ago you came to our world. You called us prey. You thought you would hunt us to extinction, but you made a mistake. You gave us time. Time to learn, time to adapt, time to understand that you are not the greatest hunters in the galaxy. You are just the most arrogant. Today we show you what happens when prey evolves." The human fleet attacked. Retribution led the assault, diving toward a Vector cruiser at speeds that shocked the enemy. The cruiser's weapons fired, but Gina's ship twisted through space, avoiding the shots with maneuvers that seemed impossible. When the cruiser's shields rotated to a new frequency, Retribution's weapons fired in perfect timing, striking during the brief moment of transition. The shot punched through the shields and tore into the cruiser's hull. Atmosphere vented from the wound. The mighty Vector vessel, which had seemed invincible a year ago, reeled from a single hit. Across the battlefield, human ships employed tactics the Vector had never encountered. They worked in coordinated groups, 5 or 6 ships targeting a single enemy vessel. They used pack tactics, overwhelming individual Vector ships before moving to the next target. They aimed for engines and power systems, not trying to destroy but to disable. Krell watched in disbelief as his fleet took casualties. These were not lucky shots or desperate gambits. The humans were fighting with skill, with strategy, with knowledge of every weakness in Vector design. "All ships, Formation Delta," he ordered. "Crush them." But the humans had studied Formation Delta. They knew how Vector ships would move, where they would position themselves, what firing patterns they would use. Commander Hana had predicted this response and planned for it. The human fleet scattered, refusing to engage where the Vector expected, instead hitting weak points in the formation. Pilot Han flew a fighter that danced through the space battle like it was performing ballet. He destroyed 3 Vector fighters in rapid succession, using maneuvers that were impossible for enemy pilots to predict. The Vector relied on superior technology and overwhelming power. Han relied on skill, creativity, and the knowledge that he was fighting for his homeworld. On the ground, Major Ari launched a simultaneous assault on Vector landing zones. Her armored divisions used captured and modified Vector weapons, turning the enemy's technology against them. Where before human forces had hidden and observed, now they struck with precision and overwhelming force. Vector ground troops, who had spent a year hunting ghosts, suddenly faced a real army. An army that understood their tactics, their weapons, their weaknesses. Ari's forces did not defend positions. They assaulted, moving fast and hitting hard before the enemy could coordinate a response. "Target their command centers," Ari ordered. "Destroy their communication networks. Make them blind and confused." Her troops followed the plan perfectly. Explosions blossomed across Vector installations. Enemy commanders tried to coordinate their forces, but their communications were jammed or destroyed. Supply lines were cut. Reinforcements were ambushed before reaching battle zones. In orbit, High Hunter Krell realized something terrible. He was losing, not just individual battles, but the entire engagement. His fleet, which had seemed invincible, was being systematically dismantled by prey that had learned to fight back. Call for reinforcements, he ordered. Contact the nearest Imperial base. Tell them we need support immediately. The message was sent. But Admiral Minho had anticipated this too. Commander Hana had positioned long-range stealth ships along the route reinforcements would take. These ships, built in hidden shipyards throughout the asteroid belt, waited in silence. 3 days later, a Vecthar relief fleet arrived. 500 fresh warships ready to crush the upstart humans and rescue Krell's reputation. They entered the Sol system confidently, expecting to find a desperate Earth barely holding on. Instead, they found an ambush. Human stealth ships dropped their camouflage and opened fire from multiple directions. The relief fleet, which had been traveling in standard formation, suddenly faced attacks from above, below, and all sides. Their shields were not prepared for simultaneous strikes from so many angles. More human ships emerged from behind asteroids and moons. This was not a desperate defense. This was a coordinated military operation, executed with precision and ruthless efficiency. The humans were not just fighting anymore. They were winning. The relief fleet attempted to regroup, but they could not. Every Vecthar tactical response had been studied, predicted, and countered. When they tried Formation Alpha, humans struck at the weak points. When they switched to Formation Beta, humans were already positioned to exploit it. For the first time in 300 years, a Vecthar fleet retreated. Not completely, not as a full withdrawal, but they pulled back to regroup. They showed uncertainty, hesitation, fear. The prey had wounded the predator. Counselor Wren watched the battle through long-range sensors from a coalition observation post. Around him, representatives from a dozen species stared at the displays in shock. "They are winning," someone whispered. "The humans are actually winning." "No," Wren corrected, his voice filled with something that might have been hope. "They have already won. The Vecthar cannot recover from this. Once prey defeats a predator, the predator is no longer feared. Every species the Vecthar conquered will see this. They will know the hunters can be beaten." In Earth's orbit, Captain Gina pursued fleeing Vecthar ships. Her weapons fired again and again, each shot carefully timed to penetrate enemy shields. Around her, the human fleet pressed their advantage, driving the Vecthar away from their homeworld. High Hunter Krell stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the battle turn into a rout. His officers looked to him for orders, but he had none to give. Everything he knew about warfare, about hunting, about honor was useless against an enemy that had learned and adapted. "Withdraw to Mars," he finally ordered, his voice hollow. "We will regroup there and establish a new defense line." The Vecthar fleet retreated to Mars, taking up positions around the Red Planet. It was meant to be a strategic withdrawal, a chance to gather strength and plan a new assault. But everyone watching knew the truth. The siege of Earth was broken. The prey had defended their homeworld against the greatest predators in the galaxy, and more than that, they had proven something important. The Vecthar could be beaten. Admiral Minho watched the enemy retreat on his displays. Around him, his command staff celebrated. But Minho did not celebrate yet. Driving the Vecthar back was not enough. They would regroup, request more reinforcements, return stronger. This battle was won, but the war continued. "Prepare for the next phase," he ordered. "We do not stop at defending Earth. We take back our entire system. And then," Commander Hana finished his thought, "then we take the war to them." Minho nodded. "The Vecthar think they are hunters. They think warfare is sport. We will teach them what war really means. We will show them that humanity does not just survive. We protect. And we will make sure they never hunt another species again." Across the galaxy, the news spread. Earth, a species given 30 days to prepare for extinction, had held out for a year. They had learned the Vecthar's secrets, adapted their technology, and driven the hunters away from their homeworld. Enslaved species whispered the news in secret, afraid to hope but unable to stop themselves. Free species watched and wondered if they too could resist. The Vecthar Empire, which had seemed eternal and unstoppable, suddenly looked vulnerable. And in their underground command center, human leaders began planning not just defense but offense. They had been prey for long enough. Now it was time to hunt the hunters. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Luna. On the surface, Earth appeared dead. Empty cities crumbled slowly under wind and rain. Abandoned vehicles rusted on silent highways. The Vecthar ground forces patrolled a ghost world, searching for prey that refused to appear. High Hunter Krell paced the command center he had established in what used to be Moscow. His officers watched nervously as their commander's frustration grew with each passing day. The hunt was supposed to be over by now. Humans should have surrendered or been eradicated. Instead, they had simply vanished. How can an entire species hide? Krell demanded. We have sensors. We have orbital surveillance. Where are they? Underground, High Hunter, replied one of his officers. Our scans detect massive tunnel systems, but they are too deep. The humans built their shelters well, then dig them out. We have tried. Every patrol we send into the deep tunnels does not return. We find no bodies, no evidence of battle. They simply disappear. Krell slammed his fist on the table. This was not how hunts worked. Prey did not use tactics like this. Prey fought bravely and died, or they surrendered and became servants. Hiding was dishonorable, incomprehensible to Vecthar culture, but humans did not care about Vecthar honor. Deep beneath the ruins of Sol, Dr. Yuna worked in a facility that had become Earth's most important research center. Around her, hundreds of scientists and engineers studied the data collected during the Battle of Luna. We have isolated the shield frequency patterns, Yuna reported to Admiral Minho during their daily briefing. The Vecthar shields rotate through 12 different frequencies, but the rotation is predictable. If we time our weapons correctly, we can hit them during the transition periods when the shields are weakest. How long until we can build weapons that exploit this? Minho asked. 4 months, maybe 5. We are working as fast as we can. Beside Yuna, Engineer Hyun pulled up schematics for new ship designs. We cannot match Vecthar firepower directly, so we are designing smaller, faster vessels. They will use hit-and-run tactics, strike at weak points, then retreat before the enemy can respond. Minho studied the designs carefully. These ships looked nothing like Earth's old fleet. They incorporated Vecthar technology that had been reverse-engineered from captured equipment and sensor data. How many can we build? He asked. In our hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, we can produce about 50 vessels over the next 8 months, Hyun replied. It is not enough to match their fleet, but it is a start. Good. Continue the work. While scientists worked underground, military forces conducted a different kind of war on the surface. Lieutenant Su led a reconnaissance unit that specialized in observing the enemy without being seen. Her team of 20 soldiers had been trained in guerrilla tactics that the Vecthar had never encountered. They moved through the tunnels like ghosts, emerging at night to watch Vecthar patrols. They recorded everything: how the enemy moved, how they communicated, what weapons they carried, what tactics they used. After gathering data, they vanished back underground before the Vecthar knew they had been there. They are arrogant, Su reported during a debriefing. They patrol in the same patterns every time. They do not expect ambushes because no prey has ever ambushed them before. We could kill them easily, but our orders are to observe only. Correct, said Major Airy, who coordinated all ground operations. We are not ready to fight yet. When we do strike, it must be overwhelming and decisive. Until then, we watch and learn. Sergeant Tay commanded a special forces unit with a different mission. They did not just observe the Vecthar. They captured them. It was dangerous work. Tay's team would identify small patrols, track them into isolated areas, then use human-designed weapons to disable their armor without killing them. The captured Vecthar soldiers were taken deep into the tunnel systems, far from any hope of rescue. Most refused to speak at first. Their culture demanded they resist to the death rather than provide information to prey species. But Dr. Nari, a psychologist who had studied every available record of Vecthar culture, slowly broke through their resistance. She did not torture them. Instead, she talked to them, asking questions about their homeworld, their families, their honor code. Slowly, some of them began to speak. From these conversations, humanity learned valuable intelligence. The Vecthar Empire was not monolithic. It was divided into noble houses that competed for status. High Hunter Krell belonged to House Krell, a moderately powerful family that had been seeking glory through conquest. More importantly, humanity learned about the Vecthar honor code. Once a hunt began, it could not be abandoned. To retreat from prey was the ultimate shame. A hunter who ran from the hunted would lose all honor, all status, all respect. Their family would be disgraced for generations. When Admiral Minho learned this, he smiled for the first time in months. They cannot leave, he said to Commander Hana. Their pride has trapped them here. We can use that, Hana asked. Time is our weapon. Every day they stay, we grow stronger. We learn more. We build better weapons and ships. Meanwhile, they accomplish nothing. They cannot hunt what they cannot find. Eventually, their empire will demand explanations. Why has House Krell not finished this simple conquest? What is taking so long? Hana understood. We are not just fighting Krell's fleet. We are fighting his reputation, his honor, his political position. The longer we resist, the weaker he becomes. Exactly. And a weak enemy makes mistakes. 3 months later, those mistakes began to appear. Frustrated by months of inactivity, some Vecthar officers demanded more aggressive action. Against Krell's orders, they sent patrols deep into the tunnel systems, determined to find and destroy the hidden humans. These patrols never returned. Sergeant Tay's Special Forces units were waiting. They had spent months preparing ambush points throughout the tunnels. When Vecthar soldiers ventured too deep, they walked into carefully planned traps. The humans did not fight fairly. They collapsed tunnels, vented atmosphere, used captured Vecthar weapons against their former owners. They took equipment, captured prisoners, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Each successful ambush provided more technology to study, more prisoners to question, more psychological pressure on the enemy. The Vecthar began to fear the tunnels. Their warriors, who had conquered dozens of species, now hesitated before entering the darkness beneath Earth's surface. Krell demanded updates from his fleet in orbit. The news was not good. His ships had been sitting idle for months, consuming fuel and supplies. The Vecthar Empire was beginning to ask questions. Other noble houses mocked Krell for being unable to defeat such primitive prey. "Initiate orbital bombardment," Krell finally ordered. "If we cannot dig them out, we will collapse their tunnels from above." His officers hesitated. "High Hunter, the bombardment will destroy what remains of Earth's cities. It will make the planet less valuable. I do not care about value anymore." Krell roared. "I care about finishing this hunt." The bombardment began. Vecthar ships fired massive weapons at the surface, targeting areas where human tunnel networks were suspected. Explosions tore through abandoned cities, collapsing buildings and creating massive craters. But the human shelters had been built deep, far deeper than the Vecthar realized. The bombardment killed no one. It just destroyed empty ruins that humanity no longer needed. Deep underground, Admiral Minho watched the bombardment on monitors and smiled grimly. Krell is losing control. He is desperate. Desperate enemies make the kind of mistakes we need. Dr. Yuna entered the command center with news. "Admiral, our first prototype ships are complete. We can begin combat testing." "How many?" 5 vessels. Not much, but they incorporate everything we learned. Adaptive shields, predictive weapons targeting, hybrid human Vecthar engines. "They are ready." Minho stood, straightening his uniform. "Then it is time to begin the next phase. We have been the prey long enough. Now we show the Vecthar that humans can hunt too." Across the galaxy, Counselor Wren watched intelligence reports with growing surprise. Earth had gone silent 6 months ago. Most species assumed humanity had been destroyed. But the Vecthar fleet had not moved on to new targets. They remained at Earth, which meant something was still happening. Could they still be fighting? Another council member asked. "I do not know," Wren replied. "But I know this. The Vecthar never stay at one world this long. They conquer quickly and move on. If they are still at Earth after all this time, then somehow, impossibly, the humans are still resisting." The council had no idea how right he was. In hidden shipyards throughout Earth's solar system, more ships were being built. In underground facilities, new weapons were being tested. In the tunnels, soldiers trained for the counterattack they knew was coming. Humanity had been learning for 8 months. They had studied their enemy until they knew the Vecthar better than the Vecthar knew themselves. They had discovered weaknesses, identified patterns, and developed tactics specifically designed to exploit everything they had learned. The prey had become something new. Something the Vecthar had never faced before. An enemy that learned from defeat, adapted to survive, and refused to give up. The long game was almost over. Soon the Vecthar would learn what it meant to be hunted. Admiral Minho stood in the command center beneath Geneva, watching screens fill with data about the Vecthar fleet. Around him, officers worked frantically, coordinating Earth's defense. 30 days had seemed like enough time at first. Now, with 28 days remaining, he understood it was nothing. "Report," he said to Commander Hana, his second in command. Hana pulled up tactical displays. The Vecthar have 2,000 warships. Our entire fleet is 200 vessels. Most of those are patrol ships and transports, not warships. In a direct fight, we lose in under an hour. Then we do not fight directly, Minho replied. He turned to face his command staff. We cannot win this battle. Everyone in this room knows that. But we can learn from it. Every engagement, every loss must teach us something about the enemy. We need to understand how they think, how they fight, how their technology works. You are talking about sacrificing our fleet, said Captain Day, commander of the battleship Indomitable. His voice was hard but not angry. He understood what Minho was saying. I am talking about buying humanity time, Minho answered. If we can learn enough, if we can survive long enough, maybe we find a way to win later. But first we must be willing to lose now. Across the room, Dr. Yuna watched the discussion. She led Earth's research division, coordinating scientists from every nation. For 28 days, her teams had been studying every piece of information about the Vecthar. Old footage from other species' defeats, scattered sensor readings, refugee testimonies from the Galactic Coalition. I need more data, Yuna said. Everything we have is incomplete. We know the Vecthar use energy shields, but we do not know the frequency or power levels. We know their weapons are plasma-based, but not their exact specifications. If you want us to find weaknesses, we need detailed scans during actual combat. Then that is what we will get you, Minho said. He began issuing orders. All civilian populations evacuate to underground shelters. Mars and Europa colonies are abandoned immediately. Pull everyone back to Earth. Make it look like we are concentrating our forces, but really we are reducing targets. Sir, said Engineer Bin from the communication station. What about our satellites? Our space stations? Leave them operational as long as possible. Use them to gather data on Vecthar movements. When the attack comes, every station, every ship, every probe will record everything it can and transmit to our ground facilities. The preparations took on desperate speed. Millions of people moved into massive underground facilities that had been built in secret over the past decade. Earth's government had always feared invasion, though they had imagined human enemies, not alien ones. Now those shelters became humanity's last refuge. In orbit, the fleet prepared for battle. Captain Day gathered his crew aboard the Indomitable. They were 500 men and women who knew they were unlikely to survive the coming fight. We are not here to win, Day told them honestly. We are here to buy time and gather information. Every second you keep this ship fighting is a second scientists use to learn about the enemy. Every scan you complete, every transmission you send might save millions of lives later. That is our mission. That is how we serve Earth. The crew accepted this without complaint. They had volunteered for this knowing the odds. On the ground, Dr. Wu studied biological data about the Vecthar. The enemy species was physically powerful, stronger than humans with faster reflexes and enhanced senses. They evolved on a high-gravity world with dangerous predators. Hunting was built into their culture, their psychology, their entire civilization. They see warfare as sport, Wu explained to Yuna. They have ritual patterns they follow. Announce arrival, grant time to prepare, then attack in specific formations. It is traditional for them, ceremonial even. They are powerful, but they may also be predictable. Can we use that? Yuna asked. Maybe. If we survive long enough to understand the patterns. The 30 days passed too quickly. On the morning of the 31st day, the Vecthar fleet moved forward. They approached Luna, Earth's moon, where half of humanity's fleet waited in defensive formation. High Hunter Krell watched from his flagship as the human ships prepared to fight. They were so small compared to his vessels, so weak. This would barely count as a hunt. All ships, he commanded. Begin the attack. Follow traditional formation Alpha. Let us see if these humans have any courage. The Vecthar warships opened fire. Energy beams tore through space, slamming into human shields. The shields held for perhaps 3 seconds before collapsing. Explosions blossomed across the human fleet, but the humans fought back. Their weapons were weaker, but they aimed well. Missiles streaked toward Vecthar ships, detonating against shields that absorbed the damage easily. It seemed hopeless. Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Day watched his fleet die around him. But his crew was working frantically at their stations. Continuous scanning, he ordered. Target that cruiser. I want full interior scans, shield frequency analysis, and power system mapping. Transmit everything to ground control. The ship shook as Vecthar weapons hit their weakening shields. Day knew they had minutes at best. Engineering, he called. Can you get me close to that cruiser? Engineer Ben looked up from his console. Sir, if we approach that close, they will destroy us. That is the idea. But before we go, we take one of them with us, and we get our scans. The Indomitable surged forward, engines at full power. Vecthar ships fired on it, tearing through armor and hull. But Day kept the ship moving. Systems failed around him. The crew worked until the last moment, transmitting data even as explosions consumed the ship. At the last second, Day rammed the Indomitable directly into the Vecthar cruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. But in those final moments, Ben had managed something incredible. He hacked into Vecthar communications for 47 seconds, downloading fleet coordination protocols before the connection died. Across the battlefield, human ships followed similar patterns. They fought knowing they would lose, but making every loss count. They scanned, they recorded, they transmitted. The Battle of Luna lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 80% of Earth's fleet was destroyed. Thousands of brave men and women died in the cold of space. The surviving ships retreated to Earth, battered and broken. High Hunter Krell was pleased with the results. The humans had shown more courage than he expected, but courage without power meant nothing. He ordered his fleet to bombard Mars, destroying the abandoned colonies as a demonstration. Let Earth see what awaited them. But in the underground facility beneath Geneva, Admiral Minho was already reviewing the data purchased with so much blood. Terabytes of information streamed in from dying ships and destroyed stations. Una and her team worked without sleep, analyzing everything. Shield frequencies, weapon signatures, power system designs, communication protocols, tactical patterns. It was more information than they had dared hope for. Can we use this? Minho asked. Una looked up, exhausted but excited. Yes, we can use this. We know how their shields work now. We know their communication systems. We know how they coordinate fleet movements. Admiral, we just learned more about the Vecthar in 4 hours than the Coalition learned in 300 years. How long before you can develop countermeasures? Months, maybe a year. We need time. Then we buy time, Minho said. He activated the next phase of Earth's defense. All remaining military forces retreat to bunker systems. All civilians go to deepest shelters. Make Earth look empty. Make them hunt for us. Commander Hana understood immediately. We disappear. Make them search for prey that cannot be found. Exactly. The Vecthar think they have won. Let them think that while we learn how to actually win, the Vecthar forces landed on Earth, expecting to hunt down remaining military units. Instead, they found empty cities and silent forests. The prey had vanished into the ground, into bunkers and tunnels that ran deeper than Vecthar sensors could reach. Krell stood on Earth's surface for the first time and felt something unexpected. Confusion. Where were the humans? Prey was supposed to run or fight, not vanish completely. Deep underground, humanity prepared for a very different kind of war. They had lost the battle, but they had gained something more valuable than victory: knowledge. And with time, knowledge could become power. The burning world of Miran turned the sky red. Ren watched from the escape pod as his homeworld died below him. The Vecthar warships hung in orbit like dark stars, their weapons tearing through the cities he had known all his life. 3 billion souls lived on Miran yesterday. Today, maybe a few thousand remained, scattered in ships fleeing into the cold darkness of space. This was how the Vecthar hunted. They always announced their arrival first. They gave every species 30 days to prepare, to build weapons, to say goodbye to loved ones. It seemed like mercy, but it was cruelty. Those 30 days let fear grow, let hope die slowly. Then the Vecthar came and they turned resistance into a game. Ren had fought in the defense fleet. He watched the Vecthar ships tear through their formations like they were made of paper. The enemy was fast, powerful, and completely without mercy. When Miran's military collapsed, the Vecthar landed ground forces. They hunted survivors through the streets. They made it sport. The Vecthar were not like other conquerors. They did not want resources or territory. They wanted to prove they were the greatest hunters in the galaxy. Every species they found became prey. Some fought back. Some tried to hide. Some begged for peace. None of it mattered. The Vecthar always won. For 300 years they had carved a path of blood across the stars. Dozens of species had fallen. Some were enslaved, forced to serve the Empire. Others were simply erased, their worlds left as empty monuments to Vecthar power. The survivors whispered stories in the dark corners of space. Stories of the hunters who could not be stopped. The Galactic Coalition was supposed to protect everyone. It was formed by the remaining free species, those who had not yet been conquered. But the Coalition was weak. They had no real military power. They spent their time running and hiding, always one step ahead of the Vecthar fleets. The Coalition did not fight anymore. They just tried to survive. Ren's pod docked with a Coalition station 3 days later. The station was old and hidden deep in an empty sector of space. Thousands of refugees filled the corridors, all from different species, all running from the same enemy. He made his way to the council chambers, where representatives from surviving species gathered to share bad news. Miran has fallen, Ren reported to the council. His voice was flat, empty. We are the last. The council members said nothing. They had heard this report too many times before. Another species reduced to scattered refugees. Another victory for the hunters. There is new information, said Cora, a representative from the Kelthir species. She brought up a display showing star charts. We detected signals from a new civilization. Radio waves, primitive fusion engines, basic satellites. They call their world Earth. The council chamber fell silent. A new species meant new prey for the Vecthar. Have they detected the Vecthar? Ren asked. No, Cora replied. They are young. They have only been in space for about 80 of their years. Small colonies on nearby planets. No faster than light travel. No energy shields. They are completely unprepared. Should we warn them? Asked Drex, representing a species that had been enslaved 50 years ago and recently escaped. Or would that just draw attention faster? The council debated for hours. Some argued that warning Earth would be pointless. The Vecthar would find them eventually. Others said every species deserved a chance to prepare, even if that chance was small. A few suggested staying silent, letting Earth remain unknown for as long as possible. Ren listened to them argue. He thought about Miran, about the 30 days of fear, about watching his world burn. Finally, he spoke. We warn them, he said. Even if it makes no difference, even if they cannot win, they deserve to know what is coming. The vote was close, but Ren's side won. The Coalition prepared a message containing everything they knew about the Vecthar. Their ships, their tactics, their history. They sent it toward Earth at light speed. It would take years to arrive. But the Council did not know they were already too late. 3 sectors away, a Vecthar scout fleet had detected Earth's signals months ago. High Hunter Krell stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the data about this new species. Humans, they called themselves. They lived on a blue world rich with water and life. Their military was small. Their technology was weak. They would be easy prey. Prepare the fleet, Krell commanded. We depart for Earth in 10 days. His officers bowed and rushed to follow orders. Krell smiled, showing sharp teeth. It had been too long since his last hunt. The other species had become predictable. They all fought the same way, ran the same way, died the same way. Perhaps these humans would be different. Perhaps they would make the hunt interesting. 2,000 warships prepared to leave Vecthar space. It was a larger force than necessary, but Krell wanted to make a statement. Earth would be a demonstration to the galaxy, a reminder that the Vecthar could not be resisted, that they were the apex predators of the stars. The fleet departed on schedule. It would take them 40 days to reach Earth's system. Krell spent the journey studying everything his scouts had learned about humanity. They were spread across 3 worlds now. Earth itself, a planet called Mars, and a moon named Europa. Their largest ships were designed for cargo and transport. They had weapons, but primitive ones. Chemical explosives and basic energy weapons. The humans had conflicts among themselves, but they seemed to be unifying under something called the United Earth Defense Force. Krell found this amusing. They thought they could defend themselves. They thought building a unified military would help. It would not help. Nothing ever did. On the 40th day, the Vecthar fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. Every ship powered up their weapons and shields. Sensors locked onto human installations on Mars, Europa, and dozens of satellites orbiting Earth. Krell opened a transmission on all frequencies, knowing every human would hear his words. People of Earth, he said in perfectly translated human language. I am High Hunter Krell of the Vecthar Empire. We have come to test your worth. You have 30 of your days to prepare yourselves. Build your defenses. Ready your warriors. Say farewell to those you love. On the 31st day, we will come for you. We will hunt you. and we will determine if your species deserves to exist as servants of the Empire or should be erased from the stars." The transmission ended. Krell watched the human response with interest. Their communications networks exploded with activity. Fear spread across their world like fire. Good. Fear made the hunt better. He did not know that in a military facility on Earth, Admiral Minho was already gathering his commanders. The Admiral's face was calm as he studied the Vecthar ships on the display. 30 days, Minho said quietly. "They think they are giving us time to be afraid. Instead, they have given us time to learn." The hunt was about to begin, but neither the Vecthar nor humanity knew how it would truly end.